perhaps we'll talk a little bit more at the end about the stories, but basically they're all set abroad. There's a long story behind why, I think, in different countries. So each story is set in a different country in these two books. I'm going to read to give a flavour of two different kinds of climates and parts of the world. The first one is from True North, and the story is called Tagine with Madonna. I'm going to start at the beginning, so I don't really need to explain anything about where it is. We'll kick off at the beginning. And I'm going to read for about 20 minutes from the two. Tagine with Madonna. They call Makran an oasis, but to her it seemed like a dead place. Eve shielded her face from the spiralling sand as the jeep drew away. Even through her dark glasses, the alley was pink in the dusk. Bending forward, she picked up her bags from where the driver had dumped them. He'd muttered something in French that sounded like Monsieur Geride, then with a sigh spelt it out. Presumably he'd stopped somewhere near, though from the unbroken mud-red walls that rose on each side of her, there was no means of telling, and no one to ask. The narrow street was deserted. Then just along it she noticed someone, a diminutive white-robed man, his face very dark. Leaning casually in the doorway, he examined her fixedly. Sudanese, she told herself, walking forward. Even this small observation helped ease her headache, reassured her for this assignment her research had been thorough. In fact, she saw now the man was not small. The entrance where he stood was 2 steps down from the street. The deep shadow behind him made her think of a burrow dug in the sand. From it came the oily smell of meat cooking. Somewhere a sheep bleated mournfully in the dry, still air. Pardon, monsieur, je cherche. A sharp human cry cut her short. She turned, heard a series of yelps and squeals. Through the fiery veil, still suspended where her taxi had been, a pack of small children came hurtling towards her, waving and shrieking. Before she had time to react, she felt a tug on her arms, looked back to see yet another infant, a barefooted boy with a blue-black hair shawl close to his skull, hurrying through an arch which lay opposite. Her 2 bags swayed beside him, almost dragging the dirt. To keep sight of her things and escape the oncoming horde, she pursued the child without thought. At the end of the passageway, she spotted him holding open a thick wooden door. Reinforced with black studs, a small grille at eye level, it was like entering a prison. The door closed behind her, and she heard a bolt drawn across. Facing them was a small enclosed courtyard. A bright yellow towel hung drying from a window above. As on the street, the inner walls were of dull reddish clay, pitted and crumbling. The boy looked her up and down with his enormous dark eyes and grunted something. It meant nothing to her. She began climbing after him, up a flight of steep, narrow steps which twisted into the gloom. They emerged on a gallery, past one door before the boy stopped. The size of the key he pushed into the lock reinforced her impression of dungeons. He set down the bags, went across and pushed wider a small creaking shutter. She looked about her, appalled. There was no space to move, and the ceiling was barely a foot from her head. A low, narrow board ran the length of one wall. She wouldn't have recognised it as a bed had not the blanket been lying there. Ragged and crumpled, as though the last occupant had only a moment ago thrown it off, she stared at it with disgust. The boy struck a match, applied it to a battered-looking lamp which began to burn smokily. At the foot of the bed, on a low 3-legged typewall, was a pitcher of water in an earthenware bowl. "Et la tarif?" she asked. She could feel the grip through the soles of her thin canvas shoes, sense it piled in the corners which the flickering light didn't touch. "D'une nuit, 3 peut-être." "Ah, oui," smiling in response, amused by her pronunciation. "You are American," he continued in English. She sighed, nodding. "But how much?" $30, 2 days. His grin never wavered. 30? You're kidding. She made a move for the bags. "I'll find someplace else." "No else," he beamed. "Only fondue for camel." Fumbling in her shoulder sack, a big leather chakara she brought in Algiers, she gave him the change from her taxi. As a tip, it was excessive, but she wished him gone. To put as much distance as possible between herself and the ceiling, she yanked off the blanket and lay down, hands pillowing her head. The board bit once at each vertebra. She was never going to sleep on purpose of Larkham's withdrawal here had been to discourage visitors, she imagined it had proved a success. Now she saw what a hole the Kran was. She found it harder than ever to picture how he was living. Christ, to throw up Europe, that hilltop retreat in Ibiza, for this. There had to be easier ways to achieve anonymity. Now that she was still, the familiar throbbing returned deep behind her eyes. She realised she'd eaten nothing since daybreak. A roll and some god-awful coffee forced down with the fumes of the bus depot. It occurred to her vaguely that she ought to go out again, trace that hideous aroma back to its source. When she did rise, however, it was only to fish 2 Nembutal from her bag. The water from the pitcher was brackish and warm. She dropped in some stereotypes before collapsing once more. Closing her eyes, she tried to exclude any thought of the desert around. Sometime later she awoke. The lamp had gone out and the darkness was cold. Hugging herself tighter, she lay still and listened. Something strange had been howling just now. A jackal? Hyena? Or was that part of her dream? For the first time she noticed above her 4 splinters of moonlight, the outline of a trapdoor. Heavily she turned her head, looking for a way up. There were no steps, she knew that. The wall at her side was rough and irregular, however, and shortly she realised that certain notches were deliberate footholds. She reached out, groped for her cigarettes and a sweater. Then she stood on the bed and pushed up at the trap. It gave without trouble. She found herself on a small flat roof with a rampart-like shoulder-high wall all around. The merest wind stirred. The moon remained, but behind a high dome lay the first sign of dawn, the finest pale thread. The dune itself cast its shadow deep into the town, right to the foot of the wall where she stood. Again she had the impression of a smooth-sided bowl with herself in its basin. All round the rim, the sand seemed set to pile over. She took out a cigarette, lit it, and inhaled deeply, leaning on the parapet. She felt easier looking down on the empty street, tracing with the red point of ash the fort's silhouette on the escarpment, the ragged outline of palms at its feet, the minaret's needle. She flicked the stub into the dark. There was none of the coast's humidity here, just a dry electrical stillness. She was certain her migraines were related to this, to the faint but discernible building of pressure. There was also Eid al-Adha, of course, the great day, the sacrifice of the sheep, just a few days ahead. Preparations for this were generated their own form of tension. In Algiers, it was impossible to miss the tethered rams in the market. She chanced across a whole flock being herded through the passages of the Kasbah. And even here there was the inescapable bleating. Perhaps once blood had been spilt, the first throat cut, her headaches would cease. The first quavering notes of the muezzin sent a host of small birds pinging down from the minaret. She returned to the room, threw some water over her face and dressed quickly. There was a threshold of tiredness beyond which further sleep was impossible. She'd go out shortly, find a mint tea or something. No point calling on Larkham much before 9. First she sat on the bed, smoked another lucky strike, wondered for the umpteenth time about Ed and the letter she was writing. Sure, she should have told him before this, face to face, but somehow the right moment had never presented itself. She couldn't think how their engagement had happened or how he persuaded her. Mrs. Edward Legree, the prospect now made her shudder. The past months had been a question of how to escape without seeming the bitch of all times. Ed, perhaps not wholly oblivious, had tried to dissuade her from making this trip. Darn it, honey, it's you and me now. We need to make plans. She could still hear his tremor of panic. He'd strode the apartment the whole time she was packing. She knew he considered her thoughtless, foolhardy, feared all manner of nebulous danger. And of course it was true. She was conscious that coming after Larkham now might in some way force her hand. La ilaha, ilallah, Mohammed Rasulullah, and Muezzin droned on. She'd always assumed that to return to New York was inevitable. But what had been keeping her there beside Ed? Not love of the city, certainly, and the Larkham thing could be handled from anywhere. Syndicated worldwide as it should be, it would buy her all the time she needed. Meanwhile, what she needed was shelter, any place, long enough to figure things out. Her return flight was via Paris. She could stay there, find a room, get the story in shape. Sure, why not? Feeling almost lightheaded, she grabbed her bag and went out. it's called Ambition. I'm also going to start at the beginning. Ambition. That's just a slightly shorter extract. School was duller than usual that day, and it wasn't long before Professor Yoltsov's chalk marks were blurring like the snowflakes outside. Arkady watched as a workman across the yard hammered icicles from the roof of the chemistry block. All over the city they jagged from the gutters like knives. At 4 o'clock it was dark again. On the corner he said goodbye to Sasha and caught the tram home. The apartment where he lived with his mother was on the 15th floor, but these days he used the lift as little as possible. His new coach, Pyotr Ilyich Semyakin, was insistent. Talent? Sure you have talent. And legs like a stork. You want to fly, kid? Be a champion? Bring me strong legs, and we'll see. Arkady stood still and listened. The stairs sounded quiet today. His record, lobby to door, was just under 2 minutes. Grasping the whole wall, he took a deep breath and crouched forward over the step. On his wrist, his second hand edged towards 12. As it touched, he sprang forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, and round on the landing. 1, 2, 3, 4. His free arm pumped as he swung into the rhythm. Up and up, round and round. 210 steps in all, 2 at a time. His muscles today felt like springs. It was effortless. Level 9, he knew he would do it. If your mind's still running, so will you. Peter Ilyitch's words rang in his head. It's a matter of will. Then he was there, falling against the door, light-headed, laughing. His breath came in gasps, his thighs burned, but exhilaration filled him. 10 seconds under. He checked his watch twice before he believed it. Still panting, he pulled himself upright. From inside his shirt he drew out the key on its string and let himself in. Mumia? He said. The lobby was dark. Probably she was out at the shops or upstairs with the rooms. Throwing his bag on the chair, he removed his shirt and washed at the basin. There was some rock on the radio, Brigada S. Listening vaguely, he pulled on his tracksuit, checked his bag with the Dynamo logo. The suit was better than it looked, and it warmed him. At the gym, it was Young Pioneers Night. The changing rooms were noisy and crowded, full of steam from the showers. He went quickly through to the weight room. Come on, I said, stretch, Semyakin was soon barking orders. Further, go on, those dumbbells are subtler than you. Arkady grimaced, thinking of Sunday. If conditions were right, he'd make his first jump on the 90-metre hill. Despite all the bluster and chiding, Semyakin plainly believed he was ready. 6 Soviet titles, 2 Olympic golds. It was 10 years since Peter Ilyich had competed, but his place in history was assured. On the walls of Arkady's room, Semyakin was up there with Belousov, Napolkov, and the current magician, Neumann the Thin. Not bad, Semyakin nodded when they were done. See, the fitter you are, the sharper you think. He smiled. Sunday then, don't be late. Outside, night had fallen. The sky was clear, full of stars. Arkady walked as briskly as the pavements allowed, each breath clouding in front of him. A month's worth of snow had fallen in 3 or 4 days, and the bulldozers made little impression. Around every tree, ice was piled like solid grey rock. He passed people edging along in a well-practiced shuffle, heads bowed in fox fur, black astrakhan. He took the bus back to Praskaya. Under the street lamps, snow glistened on the ledges of the old Tsarist buildings. With their yellow and pink and O'Donnell stucco, they seemed to Arkady like giant birthday cakes set down in the snow. His own anniversary, his 16th, was only a few days off, December the 11th, the first since his father left. He got down from the bus and peered at his watch in the darkness. 8:40. Maria would expect him. She'd be leaving for the factory soon. On impulse, he decided he'd rather not see her tonight. The current atmosphere depressed him too much. Round the foot of the neighbouring block ran a covered arcade with some shops. Their windows dark and closed for the night. There was a cafe there where his friends sometimes went. Its big single window, the glass steamy, made the place look warm and inviting. Inside he saw Dima, a classmate who lived in the neighbourhood. Dima looked up as Arkady came in and waved him over. Seated opposite his friend was a girl. She turned and smiled as Arkady approached. She had short blonde hair, a pert nose, and very blue eyes. She didn't go to their school, and he guessed she was older than Dima, or he. The bright eyes surveyed him with confidence, playfully. She made room for him next to her. You know one another? Asked Dima. Katerina Niski, Arkady Kisel, Arkady Katerina. The girl put her hand to her mouth and sniggered. Kissel, like the pudding. Arkady felt the blood rush to his face. Catching the eye of the woman at the counter, he asked for some tea. Sorry, said Katerina, I'm always doing that, saying things I shouldn't. Don't worry, Dima laughed. He's immune to it now, aren't you, Carly? Of course. He wanted to look at her directly. He couldn't bring himself to. Beneath the thick sweater, his skin was prickling. He felt suddenly hot and uncomfortable. Training, said Dima, nodding at his bag. And to Katerina, Card is a ski jumper. I'm hoping to be. His tea arrived. Dima already had coffee and Katerina a milkshake. Don't listen to him, he's good, Dima persisted. Semyarkin's protege. Oh, honestly, I think it's so brave, jumping off into space. Katerina looked from one to the other. Even a motorbike's too much for me. Arkady glowed in her praise. He stole a glance at her profile, her sweet little nose. Just then he felt he'd go anywhere, risk anything, provided she was with him. In his mind's eye, he held her, smelt her hair as she clung to him tight, as the world spun beneath them. Yes, they'll be waiting, she was saying to Dima, pointing upward. Arkady stood to let her out. You live here then, this block? She was pulling on her coat. The question seemed to amuse her. He saw her smile to herself. Bye, Dima. Bye, Cardi. Then she was gone. Well, Dima chuckled. Who's turned to jelly then? I reckon someone's in love. Arkady frowned. Oh, she's lovely, but... Come on, you saw the way she looked at you. Oh, I think it's so brave, he mimicked. What are you waiting for, idiot? Arkady stirred what was left of his tea. Dima could really be a peasant. Not everyone thinks like you do. Sure they do, sooner or later. Look, I've got to go. They paid and went out. A yellowish fog was settling over the street lamps. At the crossing they separated. Arkady said a curt good night and walked on, thinking